Have you been feeling like your character relationships are just kind of meh? Like it could probably be summed up in one of those Twitter ship dynamic memes. You know the ones. So I kind of just wanted to make a video explaining my process of how I come up with different character dynamics and make them interesting, or at least try to. In my opinion, I think character dynamics are one of the most important part that makes an OC interesting to me. I am not a professional writer, but you should listen to me anyways. This video is going to be a bit more rambly and more of my process of how I come up with dynamics. Not really a step-by-step tutorial by any means, but if this helps even one person, that is good. That is good. All right, tip number 1, don't box your characters' relationships. Okay, so basically, when I was younger and I would try to come up with character dynamics, I did what I think a lot of people do, or it's kind of common to try to find a specific box that your character relationships fit in, right? So, oh, you say, oh, they're friends, or they're family, siblings, or they're enemies, or they're lovers, or like you just pick one, and then that defines their entire dynamic, and then you simply move on. You don't elaborate. It kind of goes off preconceived notion. So basically making it the reader's job to assume what these characters' dynamic is just based on the label you gave them. Like they're lovers, so they're gonna act like this. They're family, so they're gonna act like this. They're friends, so they act like this. Basically. And here's the thing. That works technically, because we all know what a friend is, we all know what a sibling is. But as I started trying to make more complex characters, I realized that those rigid boxes can actually strip away what makes the relationship more interesting. Because at some point, I realized that some of my characters, their relationships simply cannot be described. And especially back then, I didn't realize that two things can exist in one. Someone can be your family and your mortal enemy at the same time, or someone could be your lover and your best friend. Or maybe you hate someone, but you can't help but respect them. Stuff like that. So I feel like the box is kind of a starting point, or I guess if you're trying to do your relationships in a nutshell, I especially notice this a lot when people tend to describe any characters that have a close friendship as being like siblings. Like, you can have a close friendship with someone without them feeling like your sibling, because those are two different things. Just the thought. I never really liked when people do that, but whatever. Simplicity, I guess, is for simplicity's sake. So a framework I started using now to start off with the basis of a character's dynamic is what I like to think of it as a kind of a push and pull, or like a giving and taking of energy between two characters. This sounds like it doesn't make any sense, but listen, this is how my thought process works. If you want to think like me, you gotta think like me. You know what I'm saying? So basically, the question I ask myself is, what is each character getting out of this dynamic, or also what do they lose from it? Like, is it a monetary gain? Is it social gain? Is it do they want to hang out with someone? Are they lonely? And that's the only person available. Because it sounds so toxic. But, like, I even use this method for healthy relationships between characters, because everything has its pros and cons. You gain some things, you lose some things. Let's say if a character's in a serious romantic relationship, technically they're losing, quote unquote, other options, but the benefit of the meaningful relationship is worth it to that character. So it's still kind of a losing and gaining situation. My thinking behind this is, if two characters have absolutely nothing to get or give to one another, even if it's just something like simply wanting someone to talk to, or just that they like the person, I feel like they would just be strangers. So if I can't articulate what each character is getting out of the dynamic, that's probably a sign I need to work on their motivations, I guess, more. The next section is about their shared history. This one gets some attention in my brain, but I think I should probably put it at the forefront because it's kind of important. Shared history is basically, how did these two characters meet? Did their dynamic develop? Has it stayed the same since they met? Basically, it's the why behind why these characters treat each other like they do in the current moment. Without it, the relationship kind of just feels like it popped up out of nowhere. Like, if two characters hate each other, I want to know why they hate each other. Were they okay with each other before, then something happened? Did one character do something to the other character? Or did they kind of not vibe from the start? Usually the basic question I ask myself is, how long have these characters known each other? Because typically, unless your character has some attachment issues, the shorter you've known someone, usually the less attached to them you'll be. I guess it's pretty obvious, but it does have a huge effect on how they communicate, what they're willing to forgive, or how much they really know each other. Because I will say, a common pet peeve I've had is characters who've only known each other for 3 days and act like they've been tight their entire lives. That doesn't make any sense. I do like I could of course some relationships develop faster than others, but come on, 3 days? You know them 3 days and you're willing to die? There are not a lot of people I'm willing to die for. I'll just put it like that. Of course, their background doesn't have to be some crazy, like, traumatic event or something like that. It could just be something mundane, like, did they grow up in the same house together? Did they work together? How did they meet? Fuck it, maybe they met on the battlefield or something. Like, that could forge a bond. I'm gonna use my own OCs as an example because I want to talk about them. Bishop, Willis, and Nisha. They grew up in the same kind of extended family unit. Their parents were in a polyamorous relationship, so they're basically like step siblings. Bishop and Nisha are a lot closer because they've grown up with each other their entire lives. Naturally, they're gonna be closer. They tell each other everything. They gossip together. They're really mean to Willis. You know how it is. And Willis is kind of just there. He likes to insert himself into situations where he's not really needed or no one really wants him there because growing up he kind of felt isolated from his family, so there's some issues going on there. Now since they're in their 20s, they've already accepted each other as family, but there's still a bit of a disconnect to where Willis actually belongs in the whole dynamic. And since he kind of feels left out, he kind of overcompensates with how helpful he is because he shaped their entire careers basically. So so yeah, that's kind of how I use their backstories to shape the dynamics of the characters, basically. Because a lot of his interests are simply based around his siblings. They're models, he decided to become a photographer. So he feels helpful. Wow, it's that push and pull thing I was talking about earlier. Wow, we came back to that. That's crazy. The body language of your characters can also be really at the heart of how the dynamics will be perceived. Honestly, writing a complex dynamic is a lot easier when the characters themselves look and feel like fully realized people. Lately, I've been trying to bridge that gap between my writing and my art, which is exactly where today's sponsor, Skillshare, comes in. Skillshare is the best place to learn a creative skill or reconnect with your creativity and maybe avoid brain rot. Skillshare is where humans come to learn from other humans. In particular, I took comic book artist Gabriel Piccolo's class for character illustration and drawing faces and figures. He has this great segment where he talks about focusing on the silhouette and readability of the pose you draw before you even touch a single detail. He actually walks through his process of creating many iterations of one concept instead of just going with the very first thing he comes up with. When I was a younger artist, I used to feel bad when a character drawing didn't turn out perfect in the very first sketch, but this really reminded me that the early sketching phase is the best time to make mistakes and experiment with how a character carries themselves. If you want to take your own character art to another level, you should definitely check it out. And the first 500 people to use the link in my description or scan the QR code will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and now let's get on to the video. Okay, so next tip, drama. Yes, we love that. So I'll be honest, I do tend to favor dynamics that have more drama potential than not. Not necessarily toxic, or dark even. Just dynamics where there's a lot of reasons for things to go wrong. Because, if you're always agreeing on something, like, it's fun in real life, but, like, is it really that fun to watch? There's always gonna be some issue. But, it's a big but, this can be overdone, obviously. A character relationship where everything is an issue. That's annoying. I don't like that, and it stops being interesting. It just starts getting okay. It's like we've done this a million times. Can you guys work it out? I feel like the key isn't to just add more and more conflict. It's just to add more interesting conflict or more character appropriate conflict, because I feel like if the conflict feels out of character, that can also be an issue. Because if you got characters in their 40s arguing about stuff teenagers would and with no explanation, that was kind of stupid, doesn't it? I'm going to be mentioning my OCs again. So if you've watched some of my other videos, which you can, for the first iteration of Willis and Bishop, back then they were just twins and they had some kind of rivalry going on. Willis was jealous of Bishop because he was getting the girls, I guess, which cool, fine, it's a conflict. But here's the thing, when I actually thought about it, I feel like it kind of left me with more questions than answers, because I don't know, does Bishop know that Willis is jealous of him? Does he rub it in his face? Or is he just completely oblivious? Why is Willis jealous of him specifically? Of what exactly? Back then, they kind of were on the same playing field. There was nothing really to be jealous of. They were basically the same person, if I'm being honest. In the reworked version, Bishop is this very nonchalant, hot model. Like he literally finds his job boring. He just knows he's hot and he just doesn't fucking care. He's playful about it in subtle ways, but it's not in your face. While Willis gets more of the professional accolades, like he's respected in his industry. He's like a fashion designer, he's creative, but he's still kind of there. He's still kind of just there. You know what I'm saying? No one's exactly praising him for how attractive or charming he is. But despite the fact that they have the same level of success, I did still want his envy to be a little bit misplaced. They still have the same level of general success, but what Willis is envious of is more so how effortlessly things come to his brother, basically. Like he just gets paid for existing. I feel like a little bit of specificity changes it a bit, maybe, rather than he's just jealous of his brother for no reason because he's hot, I guess, because he's hotter than him. Like, okay, cool, get over it. Because technically Willis has more power and status, but that's not enough for him. Like it doesn't feel as ego boosting as he would like. Okay, next section. This one kind of ties back to what I was saying earlier, but just a little exercise I like to do is if one of the characters in the dynamic was taken out of the equation, what would happen? Like Willis is the reason Bishop and Nisha are even famous in the first place. Like 100%. Like it's his creative vision and his obsessive dedication to photography, I guess. I don't know. That's what pushed them to the forefront of their little popularity. So functionally, Willis is kind of the catalyst for their whole dynamic. But on the other hand, those two were also his muse. Like, without them, he wouldn't have anything to photograph. So, what I like about this more so than what it was previously, which was they didn't really need anything from each other. And it creates another interesting conflict that I like where they all think each other needs the other person more than them, if that makes sense. Like Willis thinks he's doing all the work and Bishop needs him more than he needs him because he's like he can always find another muse. I realize I haven't talked about Nisha a lot in these sections. She's a newer character, so I haven't completely figured out her function in the dynamic, but I want her to be a little bit less popular than her brothers, so she's at a slight disadvantage when it comes to them. So she has to work extra hard, and she's a bit less pretentious in terms of personality than them. As I said, she is the closest to Bishop. They're kind of like twins. Well, they're not really twins. They're like a year apart. Is that Irish twins? Is that racist? Yeah, that doesn't. But with her dynamic with Willis, she's actually the least close with him. So it's kind of like this circle in the whole family dynamic. Since he is also her manager, he does try to boss her around a bit. It doesn't really work as well since she doesn't really respect him. So here's a little exercise I do. I take two of my characters. Let's say character A, they disappear from the universe. They're wiped from existence. How would that change character B's personality? Like, would it change them at all? Like, is the other character so important in their lives that it would completely change them? If the answer is nothing would change, maybe you should work on. Maybe we need to work on that. You know what I'm saying? Also, a little mini tip. But if you have one character, like let's say you character B, and there's character A, and then there's character C. If their relationship with character A is the exact same as their relationship with character C, because no two characters should have the exact same relationship with another character, because unless those two characters have the exact same personality, that's probably just not going to happen and might be a bit confusing for anyone reading your story. All right, another thing I want to touch on is growth. Does the relationship change throughout the story? Because assuming your characters change, their relationship should also change too. Especially if one character gets significantly more character growth than the other, their dynamic is definitely going to change. That they might not even be on the same wavelength anymore. The growth of the relationship doesn't have to be something crazy. Like, of course, it can be subtle, depending on what your story is, of course, because, a small little thing I like to think about is maybe a character picks something up, or like a new skill or a habit from another character. Like, I don't know, that's just tiny little character building that I really like. And whenever I notice it, I'm like, oh, that's like, I love when characters change each other because I feel like that's what humans do. Humans change each other. Probably, allegedly. Like, I feel like Willis would definitely not be anywhere near as snarky and sarcastic as he is if it weren't for his siblings, kind of their personalities rubbing off on him because he was extremely uptight as a young guy. So yeah, that's definitely a little thing. Even people you don't like, some of their behaviors are probably going to rub off on you if you are in their vicinity for long enough. That just seems to happen sometimes. So yeah, that's kind of how I think about creating my character dynamics. Hopefully this video made a lick of sense. My thinking is a little crazy. It's a little weird. This is just how I navigate my own mess of a brain when I'm trying to make two characters do good, character relationship backbone of story. All right, I think that is all I have to say for this video. And I'm also working on a much longer video, probably my longest video I've ever made on this channel. So that should be coming out around next week. I want to get more consistent with posting videos, so I do got to do a little bit of ones like these that are more ramble style. Tell me if you like that or if you prefer the more scripted ones. If you couldn't tell, this video was unscripted. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. You are a real one, and thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Goodbye.